Welcome, everybody, to the Idaho Virtual Reality Council member meeting. So a lot of new faces, a lot of repeat faces, so I really appreciate you guys being here. Today we're talking about something a little bit different. I'm talking about virtual reality together with architecture and design. So this is something that we at Black Box VR and as part of the Idaho Virtual Reality Council, we've been preaching for quite a long time. Like, VR is great for not just video games, not just for 360 videos, but you can create inside of it. And here's all these amazing things that people have done, like NVIDIA, the huge graphics cards company. They create their entire new headquarters inside VR. And so we actually were eating our own dog food, and we created the Black Box VR gym inside of VR. So that's what we have over here. So hopefully some of you guys have got to go through it. And if you haven't, you'll get a chance to learn more about it. And so basically going inside VR, and the CSHQA guys will tell you a little bit more about this. When you're in there, it's a whole different sense of scale, a whole different sense of being there. And I always use the example of one of my first houses that I decided to build, with an architect. It looked great on paper. Went through it back and forth and saw like pictures on a computer screen. And then they put the foundation down. And then all of a sudden they put the frame up. Like, that's such a fun part, right? Because it just seems like it goes up like in one day. And then I remember walking in and immediately kind of feeling what it felt like, and I didn't like it. And it's kind of a little bit too late to make changes at that point. And ended up finishing the house, and I lived there maybe 1 year before moving, because it just spatially, it just didn't work the way that I thought it would. And that's what's great about VR, is because you can go inside that before you actually build things. So I just want to thank CSHQA for having us here. They're going to give us a great presentation and probably a lot about what I just talked about. Thank you to Silver Draft and Amy for the computers that has helped us to run these VR installations. And afterwards, if you guys haven't had a chance to go through that. But we'll go to the next slide. I think I have to press a button. Kind of talked about that already. So I do want to mention real fast a few upcoming events. We have some coffee talks coming up. So that's every other week. You can come and meet people down at Dutch Brothers downtown, and just kind of informally come by, meet new people, talk about VR, share what you're doing, as well as our next dev meetup coming up in a couple weeks at Trailhead North. And our next member meeting will be focused on art. And then, of course, the big event this year is our VR Bash. So it's our third annual VR Bash. It's going to be at the Rev Center on October 5th. So mark your calendars. You got to be there. We're going to do it totally different this year and make a much bigger party with some of the most crazy VR installations and experiences that you've ever seen, and a couple other surprises. So make sure you put it on your calendar to be there. It's going to be a lot of fun and open to the public. And so from the CSHQA team, today we've got Jim Marsh, who's going to present to us right over here, as well as Rory Heggie. And she's not here, I heard, but she's also part of the team. Is she here? Oh, she's okay. She's not here. Yeah. That was Annie's fault also. Yeah. No, she may not be presenting tonight, but Evelyn was also part of the team that helped us and has done a lot of this stuff with the VR. So with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Jim Marsh. I was like, wait.
Double microphones is awesome. Rory, you're going to help me get into some kind of a PowerPoint. Hey, thanks for everybody for coming down. We love having people in our office. We're real proud of it here. Real quick, this was an old warehouse that we've remodeled almost 4 years ago now. The street side over here used to be railroad tracks, and so these kind of big windows that you see here used to be the docks where the rail cars would come up, unload stuff. The other side was truck docks, and that's kind of why we're sitting up on a little platform here. We moved over here, like I said, 4 years ago. Decided to go full in on the energy efficiency side, and we're actually a LEED Platinum building here. We've got geothermal, we've got energy recovery off every one of our computers that saves us, gosh, I can't remember, it's like 3 or 4 tons of cooling. So all kinds of fun features, so we love just having people here. Real quick, we've been here for 129 years. So we've been around the block here in Boise. I've personally been here for 21 years with CSHQA. it's kind of a mouthful with all the letters and stuff. But we started here. You can kind of see some of the process of some of the folks that we've had over the years. And currently, the last one, Alan Quinteri, was the last one that I did get the pleasure of working with before he retired. So, kind of a quick history of us. Currently, just not very long ago, earlier this month, we went from kind of a partnership to a employee-owned. So big steps for us. We're really excited about what that's going to bring for us. So. Some of the bigger projects that you might bump into around here in Boise, some of the older stuff like the Idaho, Taco Bell Arena. More, one of our biggest, most prominent one that gets the most travelers, of course, the Boise Airport, as well as Idaho State Capitol renovation. We do work all across the nation, all 50 states, in Canada, so we can count ourselves as international, right? Canada counts. So that real brief history on us there. We're architecture, engineering firm here, interior design. So we've got internal, mechanical, electrical, structure. We don't have any structural. That's the only one we don't have. IT. So what's next after that? You?
I think so. If you want to do the history of drawing since 30 days, this would be your department.
Oh, so that is true. So I started, actually, we were working in CAD, not hand drawing. But in the early 80s, we did get our first computers. We were actually located in the, well, it was West 1 Bank Tower, now the big brown one down there next to, in downtown. Had our own computer there, had its own HVAC system, kept it at like 50 degrees. People had to wear a coat when you went inside. And it was really, really expensive. So we ran 24-hour crews on it because we had our first computer. So, flash forward, got into AutoCAD and MicroStations were our main programs. AutoCAD was kind of going one way. MicroStation was one of our bigger clients, which was Albertsons at the time. We did a lot of MicroStation. And eventually, it all kind of came back to AutoCAD, which is an Autodesk product. And that's basically what our main software packages that we do most of our design work are now. So with that, I'll kind of turn it over maybe here to Rory to let him describe some stuff.
So we'll stick to this sheet, and I think pretty much what I wanted to present to you guys is being in architecture is similar to, I think, how if you look at a lot of the industries now that are using VR, how they've developed from a flat technology to something that you're interactive with and that you're involved in the environment throughout nowadays. So we start with a hand drawing, and then that's flat and 2D that even Ryan was saying that you look at on a piece of paper and it looks great and you think it all works, but you don't really get to see what's inside the paper or how it looks in perspective or how it feels. And then you can do your best attempt with a black and white hand rendering, which some people are very talented at, but again, you're still just guessing on what that would feel like because you're trying to present an image to somebody hoping that they're going to enjoy the space, but not really understanding how that image is there. And then again, going into just the tools that we use, you move from a pencil and paper to a computer that's helping you draw it. So you're assuming it's going to help you a little bit more. And then as we continue to go, nowadays we all are using BIM modeling, which is Revit primarily. There's other people who can use SketchUp, but if you think about it, it's just a different form of how we build our architecture drawings and how we understand the environment. And then progressing even further, now we have real-time rendering. So as we change walls, as we move doors and windows, we can understand what the impacts are from a spatial awareness of seeing what that looks like. And then finally, virtual reality, which I have a hard time showing on a 2D screen. So one of probably the first, we've been using VR on a few projects, and I think we didn't really use it to the full capabilities until we got to work with the Black Box team, and I think part of that was just their understanding of what VR can do. To have someone actually put the headset on, go into the space and walk through it and actually make comments was a rare understanding from an owner. You can usually have someone look at a picture and feel fine with it, but to have somebody step in there and walk through it and understand what's going on is pretty unique. And so wanted to bring everybody and sort of explain that process that we went through with them so that everybody can understand the benefits of being able to use VR in an architecture environment. And so a general process that everybody has with architecture and design, and I think this is for every industry when you're trying to be in a creative environment, is you have your initial design ideas and then you move through to what that space or what that game in itself is going to turn into in 3D. And so we took that project and the initial design ideas, modeled it in 3D in black and white. So there's no textures, there's no color, there's nothing that's going to influence you but the space. And so then you have a black and white spatial awareness where you're allowed to walk through it and you can see everything and then understand what that feels like. And then eventually, once those are approved or you move forward with and you think you have it all right, you add materials. And then by adding materials, the space changes in how it feels again, because now you have black or white, or you have color, or you have light, and that's actually going to make the room feel smaller or the room feel larger, and their spatial awareness changes again. I think one of the best design ideas that I came away from this was actually the initial designs we had for a space, which is the warm-up area, which you can look at all three of these and realize that if once you step over and look at it in that model, none of these is what the final product is over there. And so we did a real-time render with sitting in VR and showed what this, so you could stand in the same spot, which each of these images are, and you could scroll through each one and understand what that space felt like as it changed. And this was just black and white. And so you came away with ideas or comments of, well, this looks great, but I'd rather be there. And then you turn around and you looked at, well, what does it feel like when you walk into here? Or what does it feel like as when you're leaving? And so the first one was nice, but then there was a comment of, well, what happens if you're sitting at the vanity? You're looking at somebody working out. Okay, well, now what if we move the vanity somewhere else? Well, now the space is even smaller. So how do you mix and match each of these to make it feel right until you get to that point where you've created the design that you wanted it to feel like? This is a great example of walking through just some of the understandings and design ideas that you can put in a corridor. And then one of the things we always preach as architects and designers is it's not always what you want it to look like, but sometimes it's better off just to say what you don't want it to look like. And so some of these images had a quick no, and a couple of them had a yes, and one of them had a maybe. And so we went through it, and the only limit that I think we can push on some of the programming and some of the inputs that we get would actually be to have lighting and the ability to have items move. And so in the future, hopefully, we can have an application that would be able to show light moving and the change of scenery as it's almost a movie, so that you could understand the full complexity of what's going on in the space. Because right now we're still in a stagnant stage from an architecture and design that we haven't been able to cross over to what gaming is able to do. And so that's one of the, I guess, handcuffs that we have with the programs that we're using, and we're trying to evolve into getting into those as well. And this was just another standing image of how the final product comes at the end. And this is typically what everybody will see out on a marketing board, or what you'll see in the different areas of architecture. And again, it's kind of hard to explain what something feels like in VR when you can't have them put on a headset. And so as we keep moving forward, and I think this is just how the VR environment works, there's a lot of programs that are being generated now that you can actually build in VR. And so being able to make spaces while you're in the headset is probably what's going to be moving forward. We're still limited on that capability, so we have to do the best we can with a flat screen and then going back and forth into VR and not being able to design in it. The next one is also just trying to educate all of our clients so that they can review it in VR. We've had discussions about it. Being able to actually walk through whatever space you want to design or whatever it's going to feel like is a huge advantage from both your decision making, because you can see what materials are going to be in there, what the space is going to be, because you might think that a 10 by 10 box is big enough for what you want to do. Once you get in there and put your arms out spin in a circle, find your desk, sit down, realize that you're going to put some drawers in your office, and then all of a sudden you're going to have a bunch of lamps in there. Now your 10 by 10 box has become really small, but you never understood that until you actually put on the headset and walk through it. So it's trying to make sure that everybody in their right mind can think in VR and put the headset on and actually have an understanding of what they're putting forth. And then some of it's working, which is kind of the future of how technology is working in the internet and how people are now trying to set up virtual meetings. And so it's interesting that everybody can be on a phone call today and also be in the headset together and see each other as an avatar. One of the things that architecture is working on, and there are some programs you can do it, is you can jump in as an avatar and meet in the project yourself. So you could be in one space, the designer could be in another city, and both of you could walk through together and point out things, and you could have a full conversation while walking through whatever building you're designing, which is a pretty cool and interesting spot.
Do you have a challenge with your clients getting motion sick as they kind of get their sea legs? Because they don't do this VR probably all the time. Maybe the one time they're going to look at their project. Do you have challenges with clients having, kind of motion sickness or whatever with their first VR experience?
I think we have multiple challenges. I'd say the first one is getting them to put the headset on. Usually we have to walk them through just the space themselves with the screen and then convince somebody that, hey, you want to put the headset on to understand how it actually feels. Once they put the headset on, usually, depending on what's in there, I would say they're not usually going longer than 5 minutes at a time unless they've done it before. And it's typically, I think the process that we've gone through is the initial time that somebody puts on their headset, we walk them through. So they're not trying to use the hand controls or a remote. They just stand there and look, and we'll guide them through the spaces that they want to, and then stop and then say, hey, if you want to look around, like, take your time, do this and that, and then they start to do it. And I'd say probably about 2 or 3 minutes into that, they'll either be excited about it and keep going, or they'll be like, oh, okay, I'm pretty good. Like, this is enough for me. And then somebody else chimes in and says, oh, I'll do it, or that's pretty much the end, and then you go back to looking at it on a screen. But again, it's going back to the same process of educating, and once you get used to it, people stay in there and can play for a while. But, that's pretty much what we've been working with in VR, and I think the best way to explain how we've been designing for the future is actually just walking through models and understanding how they are. So is there any other questions that we have about how we do this or what your benefits could be? Real quick. Hey, I probably have 50 answers.
Kind of tagging along behind that. What if you say you're going to use this VR with a headset 100% of the time? What percentage is used internally with the designers, and what percentage is used with management, and what percentage is used with clients?
Percentage-wise, I would probably say design-wise depends on who's designing it. And then from an experience doing the black box, I think you do majority of it on the flat screen, and then when you feel like you've reached a point that it works and you understand it, you put it in the headset.
Sure.
And so I'd probably say 20% of the design time would be in VR.
Of the total time that the VR gets used, the total time that the headset gets used, who's using it?
Probably 50% designer, 25% client, and 25% other. Go.
This week I've already had several Skype Google Hangout meetings where they're toggling between photos. I said, this seems like this would be not just anything involved with collaborative design, that we all had headsets on. You could be here, we could be 100 places, and still having the same kind of engagement, whether it was a real face or an avatar. I can make an avatar look better than me, so I'm okay with that. But how do you see the power of this becoming you offer any kind of design meeting where you can get people to actually at least feel like you're interacting physically and be able to manipulate images?
I mean, I think,
Future of that.
well, having the ability to meet in a space, when you go through the design process as an architect with engineers and with the client, you're trying to explain how everything goes together and why this decision was made, why this is put there, why you have a light. So just for discussion purposes, why is option one, why do we have a wood lattice there? It's a design feature. It's also acting as a buffer between the vanity area and the workout area. When you have 3 people in there, I might think that, this is a great idea, but I'm not thinking at the same idea that Ryan was at the time and says, well, do you want somebody actually at a vanity if they're right next to him, someone's working out or trying to warm up for their gym session? And so we came back to the conclusion that, all right, maybe that should move and change. You don't understand that until both of you are looking at it and in the space. At the same time, we also have a large mechanical duct going through that space, so we have to know to move that, which is actually, don't have a pointer. I'll point at my screen, which nobody can see. But in that vicinity, and so until you're standing there and both of you can have the ability to look up, like you said, you can look at pictures all you want, but until you have 3 people sitting in that space in virtual reality.
That just seems so powerful. I mean, I'm seeing this is a game changer.
And I think,
You don't get much.
yeah, that too. And I think one of the biggest benefits as well is your schedule of how fast you're moving, because your decision-making process becomes quicker since you feel and understand the space better instead of actually just taking pictures and understanding what a 2D plan looks like.
So obviously from the design side, there's no doubt about the opportunities there, but have you guys got far enough down the path to actually push it onto the marketing side? Because what a great experience it would be to show somebody a design in VR and then here's the finished product and they can actually walk through it virtually and you can take it from the design to completion just as you do now. I mean, you show them photos or you show them videos, but imagine being able to become complete circuit in virtual reality from design to from a portfolio standpoint, is really what it comes down to.
I think we're slowly pushing that envelope and trying to do our best at marketing how it is. But again, it's the getting the knowledge out, and the benefit is such a strange idea for a lot of people. Like I said, to get the client to just put the headset on for us has been a success. And so a lot of these we undertake is just doing it on our own and trying to present to them like, hey, you want to do this, and it's an additional step in the design process up front, but not, the benefits as we go. I think people will start to see it, and it's slowly gaining traction, which I think a lot of VR is. Until that is a little more mainstream, I think it'll take clients and everyone a little longer to understand. Go there, then there, and there.
So one of the problems you're having then is you'd like to be able to do a lot of this inside this thing. So for example, with the wooden thing, your divider, you'd want to be able to go into your 3D environment and push a button that says, okay, I'm going to move stuff around and push it. And then want to move it this direction and have everything move and have everything fit. So a lot of it's going to be your software as well as your physical interface. And those to me seem like we got the goggles, we have the showing things, but the interface seems to be a problem. Are we developing that? Are you guys developing that? Is Boise, we have the developers who can do that? We're looking at the greater world community. How are we going to get that software to that point?
That is a great question. I would say we are not developing that. One of the hardships, I guess, that we have is that while this is all great from a certain aspect to it, we still have to be able to document it legally from our plans that cities and states have to review. And so that puts the limitations on the program that we're using. There are other programs, I think, that would allow us which would also be a separate step. So while we're going through this, we're also providing the documentation to get a permit to build what we're trying to put together. The interface, if we could do both at the same time with being able to design, I know that's what Jim wants to do, is just put on a headset all day and build things. Until we get to that point, I don't know.
We're close. So the programs that we have over here with the walkthroughs, we could have our client with the headset on, and we could be in the program changing materials, moving walls, changing colors. So there is a disconnect between the person in the set actually isn't doing it, but we could be reacting to comments and stuff directly. So I think we can use it in that regard, and that really helps our decision making a lot more. Right now, our world probably works just like everybody else, where we email off a plan, you wait for somebody to open the email, they comment on it, they send it back, and so there's this disconnect just from information trading. When we can get people together, then it speeds up our process immensely.
You guys are providing undeniably thought leadership in Idaho for this, so kudos to you guys for that. It's a really emerging space. There's a lot of companies that are probably doing this in Dubai or bigger scale stuff. Where are you getting your inspiration from? To kind of who's leading you when it comes to thought in this space?
Trial and error.
Yeah.
On it, a lot of it.
I think just
We are really lucky. We have Evelyn, who's over on the corner. She's our BIM manager. Don't leave. We committed to send Evelyn to what's called Autodesk University, which is Autodesk's yearly, once a year, and they have all of their stuff, and she can probably describe that. And she comes back with all kinds of great ideas and tries to spin them off, and that's where we get a lot of this stuff and try to see if it's feasible financially to try some of this stuff. And I'll let you kind of describe.
just hold both. It's awesome.
Hi. Yes, Autodesk University is basically a conference that talks about the Autodesk software and the various suites. Revit, AutoCAD is mainly what we use here, and the different tips and tricks and industry peeks into the future, I guess. That's kind of how we figured out, hey, I think I saw it, 5 or 6 years ago, and I said, hey, Jim, there's this really cool thing that we can do now. Let's try it.
And you brought 2 or 3 back, right?
Yeah, about 2 or 3 back. Our first venture into VR would be the Google Cardboard, of course, and then it evolved to the Samsung VR gear, and now has evolved into this. Now, in the construction industry, they are beyond this. They use AR. There is a program called BIM 360 Glue, which is a add-in that can use an iPad, and you tell a spot in the drawings what pipes or what ducts go where. All they have to do, take the iPad and move it up and see. The thing's not even constructed yet, and you can see. So architecturally, we are kind of on par for the Boise area. Bigger cities, Asia, Australia, they're beyond this. They're doing the multi-person avatar meetings. They are beyond this.
I wouldn't say it's common by any means.
No, it is not common, but we do.
Yes.
It's not that common. But I have been fortunate to be involved in this within our company, and it is a boon for us. And yes, I have made people motion sick in VR.
You find, there's a lot of positives with the design and going through and seeing the design, but seeing it in a real space like that, that hasn't existed in architecture, ever. Do you find that could possibly negatively impact add some delays to revisions when you get in there through the process that you have to budget for? Rethink some things that normally that you only see on the job site later on that are now happening on your table, where it used to happen maybe somewhere else.
I'd say it's actually the opposite. is because we see them all now and you actually walk through the space, you see the mistakes that you wouldn't have actually noticed before on a 2D plan that the contractor would look at and they'd say, oh, hey, the guy's laying the pipe and now that's interfering with your door, or these two chases are lining up and they're not supposed to because just somehow it was missed or somebody in the field didn't do it exactly how it was drawn. But I mean, we have every single duct modeled for where all the airflow comes through for this. And so you can actually, even in this one, you could see there's, it's great to point out your flaws, but there's electrical outlets that are hanging out in the wall. And from our standpoint, that's not the greatest thing to have, and we fixed it. But on the plan, it might be a foot over. And so then when you walk through it, you're like, oh, these need to be indicated for where they're supposed to go. And then, so from a coordination standpoint, I think it's actually better. From a design standpoint, too, I think you have decisions that are made quicker. A lot of the time, we give a rendering or you present something and you can articulate as much as you want. But until somebody gets in there and says, I want this, no, I'm dead set on this being red. And you're like, well, that's a bad idea, but okay. And then, but you put it in VR and they look at it and they go, well, red is not good. And so you've already skipped that week of delay that goes back and forth. So I think you get a better design actually out of it.
What are the AR use cases?
So, I'm trying to think. We have a couple AR. So generally what we've seen is you have the division between AR or VR in using it in architecture. A lot of AR is generally used on a renovation project because you can see what you're looking at and then project what is going to be there in the future. And it's actually somewhat harder for the general public to visualize that because it gets confusing with what's around you, whereas putting everything into VR becomes easier to understand for what the final product's going to be. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any case studies. I do know there's 4 or 5 programs that are out there that you can do using AR. So I didn't answer your question.
I kind of answered it. How would you describe what it is that you actually do in terms of what is the value that you as the architect provide for your client? If I want to buy a house and I work with you, you provide me with a 2D floor plan that I can basically not abstract in my mind. But you provide me also the security that this is doable, that a constructor can work with this. In other words, you're very BIM-focused traditional.
Correct.
And now the visualization so far was like, okay, let me throw in some 3D renderings and here's a photo of your future house. Is that better? And I'm like, no, it looks like a photo. So now you have this amazing technology, but the technology you're using right now to create all of your work is not well set up to feed into this 3D rendering technology. It's a problem that, the BIM files versus real-time rendering files. How do you see your value change over the next 5 years? Is this being so important? Like right now, I can imagine you're spending like 99% of your time in Revit and working on the model and the BIM and whatnot, and maybe a little bit of time in 3D rendering environments where you make this fast, looking good, and performance. Do you see this changing? Do you see this even changing to a point where your tools that you use are changing more towards the rendering part versus the BIM creation part? Is that going to be so important for your clients that you feel this will change what you actually provide as value?
So, the challenge as architects is contractually we provide black and white line drawings for construction. That's what we have. That's how things get built. That's how the basis of our whole piece is. So what we end up with is this great tool that helps us as a design. When we first got our first single license of our real-time rendering, we were tracking down that one person that has it open and said, hey, get out, I want to get in, because it just got so popular just as a design tool internally. Certainly helps us with the clients. We're still a commodity-based industry. We're customer service oriented. We're bid competitively with all of our competitors. So, having a value proposition to convince our clients to pay us more is still going to be a challenge. If it's a differentiator that we provide this as a service above and beyond what our competitors do, that's probably where we're at now. Hopefully we develop the value of this system that it helps offset that. But one of the bigger challenges is we'd love to be able to place cost. I mean, we have the ability in our software to put cost on all of those items, to run quantity takeoffs on all of this, to have the contractor be able to walk through this and provide that to them so they can see exactly where the paint goes and starts and stops. Because, doing it on a 2D drawing for contractors is not overly intuitive as well. Legally, it gets really mushy for us. So are you going to, as many of you know from modeling, are you going to model every single piece of the building? I mean, it would just cripple our industry. So if we don't show the outlet that happens to be in the wood, is that now going to be a liability for us? So from our standpoint, releasing things to contractors and such it's a real kind of a touchy part that we'd love to do, but it's also putting ourselves out there at a risk. So I think that's one of our bigger challenges right now is from our industry. So right now it's mainly a design tool. Yeah, I think it has way more possibilities. And with some hefty disclaimer stuff, we do send stuff to contractors and have sit-down meetings and say, see, this is how this all goes together, or they can call us and we can pull, the nice thing with these, pull section cuts all the way through the building with our renderings and everything on so that they can really see and visualize how this stuff goes together. But contractually, it's going to be a challenge.
I guess I'll add one little snippet to that. I think you can also look at it on two different sides of it, is what is our client looking for? There's certain clients who are looking to develop something in a larger scape, a larger landscape. They want these awesome images and the ability to do fly-throughs and have people walk in from a sales standpoint so that they could have tenants come in and lease it, or have prospective clients come in and see what they're building. And so on that side, I think you start to see a little bit of a divide into like the design and marketing aspect to it, which I think if you slowly push that side of it, you would develop more into doing more real-time renderings and have more people focused in that realm. But then we still go back to what we do as architects, is get things built and put together. So
How can Idaho help you? If I'm a Boise developer, what is the software, even the hardware, that would, moving forward, make you more cost effective for us, since you're in this rather brutally competitive market? What could Idaho do for you?
Well, I think if everybody had one of those demon computers that our clients did, it would help us out a lot. But seriously, I mean, a lot of these files and these pieces that we have, a standard laptop can't open them. So we actually have standalone files we could provide to our clients. They don't have an Oculus. They may have a phone. So I think the technology breach between our office and our clients, they all have to come here or to another location that has that. That's probably one of our biggest challenges. So if we had our clients that could do it, could actually utilize this more and teach them and educate them on that, or if as it becomes less hardware intensive and software intensive, then I think it's going to be easy.
I think the other hard part that we're dealing with, and this gets into a little bit of the nuts and bolts, is the materiality. Everybody likes the pretty picture. It's a lot harder to walk through it and create the pretty picture. So we jump into a couple programs that render for us, whereas to take from an architectural model that we're working with in Revit or SketchUp or ArchiCAD or whatever that process is, and to take it into Unity or Unreal Engine or gaming engine that'll allow us to render real time a lot quicker and a lot faster, we lose a lot of our properties, and going from whether it's polygon or NURBS based to get that aspect to it. So that's actually the largest or hardest step that we find is to take what we do in Materiality and take it and put it into a better renderer or a gaming engine that'll allow us to facilitate walking through it and have that file be smaller that you can now upload and have other people look at.
Could you articulate a grand challenge?
What was that?
A grand challenge and say, this is the problem to solve. And then that means creative forces are going to address that.
That is a grand challenge in itself.
But I mean, if you have an end point that you can articulate, and people know where to go, and they can get some ideas about why it should be a worthwhile place to go.
I mean, I think the linkage between creating which we sort of have with some of the programs we use, that link from an architecture software into a gaming engine and not having to jump through hoops. I think that's probably the ultimate task. If you could achieve that, and if you developed that software and ran it to architects, you'd probably put Boise on the map for one software company for sure.
Yeah, and just the amount that you have to model. Most of the stuff we do we do have our engineers in-house that model everything in 3D, and they have issues with it. It's our software is still more based for architecture than it is for engineering. Sloped piping and Revit, and so now instead of what a plumbing mechanical engineer had a schematic line saying here's the drain line, and they're just kind of dashed lines, and you relied on a craftsman in the field to take that basically suggestion of how all the stuff goes together and put it together. Well, now we would be putting the drain in, the downpipe, the P-trap, the connection piece, and they're modeling. It's just a lot more work. Not that it doesn't have its value. Is it necessarily needed for construction? Probably not. We've been doing it the other way for a long time. So being able to automate some of those kind of things from the engineering standpoint would certainly do it. Having the rest of the industry provide us their what we call them our families, or just blocks or small models. It's whether it be a chair or an air conditioner or any of those pieces that we can bring in, and it has all the right attributes, and we can actually utilize it. So you get through a model like we do, and 2/3 of the manufacturers might have it, but there's more detail in an air conditioner than we probably put into a full building sometimes of everybody that's going through that kind of stuff. So then we kind of dumb those pieces down and say, go see the cut sheets and those kind of things. So as the industry opens up and more of those kind of pieces are available, it's going to greatly simplify some of that kind of stuff too. So, ultimately we'd love to have just an interactive model in the field for our clients, for our contractors. Everybody's seen it, they bought off on it. It's got quantities, costs, and you can just build as you go. They can manipulate the model as they need to find the information that they need to build it. But there's a lot of hurdles to get through to that. Anything else?
So with silence, we'll wrap it up. Anything else?
All right, well, another round of applause for these guys for opening up their place to us. I appreciate that. It's funny listening to the questions and seeing the perceptions that people have around some of this technology. It reminds me a lot around when the internet first came out. And I always use that story because, when I first started my first company, bodybuilding.com, back in 1999, I would tell people about the internet, about websites, and people were so confused about it. Why would I want to do that? And why would I want to buy anything? Like, is my credit card going to get stolen? And don't I have to have one of those AOL CDs? go to http:// I don't even know how to do that. Jeff Bezos yesterday, Amazon, just got named the richest person in modern history, with $150 billion. And 5% of all U.S. retail goes through one company. And it was shocking the amount of people back then that didn't really think you need a website. I remember like this front of a magazine. Do I need a website? Maybe you don't, kind of for your business. You know, then it got to be what, put content on the internet. Well, why? I can read a magazine. It hurts my eyes, these CRT monitors, and I don't really like reading. There's not that much stuff out there, just a bunch of weird stuff. And now look what happened. Content is almost every magazine is basically out of business. And then I remember when it was video. You know, you can watch like moving pictures on the internet, and it was like a new thing. You know, flash files and things like that. And this was before YouTube, and everyone was like, holy cow, you know, that's amazing. But I got so many channels on cable. Like, why would I want to sit there on my computer and watch that? Now look at Netflix. Now look at, basically all of it is going on the internet. So virtual reality is right at that point. Like, we're so lucky. Like, don't you wish you could go back before Amazon and sit in that little office where they were building their desks themselves? There's pictures of Jeff Bezos doing that and just trying to like sell books on this thing. All right, don't you wish you could go back before content became like a really big thing on the internet? And you could be one of those first people, like first social networks. You could go create YouTube. Like, if you could do that, if you could go back in time, anybody would do it. And we would be saying your name instead of all these billionaires out there. That's where virtual reality is right at this moment. And the value proposition of VR for architecture is immediately obvious. Putting it on paper is an abstraction from what you really want. You're abstracting the idea of a physical place and putting it on paper on a drawing, we just understand it. Then you have the 3D drawings, and then you go into computer drawings, right, which was a big change. And you know what I really want? I want to tell them I want this, and I want them just to make it appear in front of me. I want to be inside of it. I want to just right now in this room grab that wall, and it follows some kind of rule set, push it 3 feet that way. And then I want to like change the cut a little bit and grab that window and move it over here. And I wonder what it's going to be like in January around 5 p.m. Because you guys ever been in a place where that sun is beating down on you and you should have put blinds on there or something like that? In fact, it's funny, in our office right now we put a cardboard box to block this skylight. Literally, like this cardboard box in there just because it's like in our face. You can go to January, 5 p.m. and see exactly where the sun's going to be and how it's going to affect that room. And I want to move this floor and I want to move that ceiling and I want to be in it for real. And then I'm going to say, yep, I want that. And I'll just write the check and hopefully you can just make it that quickly without errors. That's basically what virtual reality gives you the ability to do. And we're only a couple steps away from YouTube being created, from Amazon being created, from all this different software that's going to come out that's going to make it simple for all of us. And so what I say is build the capability now. So what these guys are doing is they're on the forefront of it. They're going to conferences, they're trying the software, and that software is not that great. And it's weird, like when you walk around in it, you know. And so I do VR all day, every day, and you're moving around. It's kind of moves around, kind of weird. It's kind of buggy. It's not perfect the way it looks. You can't send it to people because they don't have the headset. You know, they don't have a computer that can run it. But that's the same thing as they didn't have the AOL CD. They didn't have a smartphone. I still have that little flip one, and I'm not switching because I like that. I'll never switch to an iPhone. You know, obviously, everybody goes there. Build the capability now. Build the understanding. Build the strength. The world is moving in that direction, and you are going to be a leader in the forefront of that here in Idaho, or you'll be looking back and say, we missed it. And that's what's so exciting about what CSHQA is doing. So I really appreciate you guys opening it up for us and really appreciate everything you guys have done here. And hope you guys haven't had a chance to go try it out. And you won't get motion sick if you do it just for a few minutes. And just speaking of that, that's the first question a lot of people ask. Motion sickness usually comes from bad design of the VR program or bad quality of the headset. So a lot of those, like Samsung Gear VRs, they don't keep up with the frame rate, so you get sick. Or some of them, you kind of move around in it, you know. So the main idea of getting sick in VR is that there's motion going on where your body doesn't feel it, your inner ear. So then the difference between those two things is what makes you feel sick. So you see motion in your eyes, but your inner ear says, we're not moving, something's wrong. Your body's basically telling you, lay down, like you're sick, there's something going on, you were poisoned or something like that. So if you design it correctly, and this program is pretty good at that because you teleport around versus having to just move around, you're not going to get that motion sickness. And then some people are a little bit more susceptible and you do get those, but it really comes down to the program design. But yeah, that's my soapbox. And I'm stepping off with, I wish there was 3 microphones next time. All right, thank you.